Welcome to this week's episode of the Ambitious, Awakened, and Aligned podcast. If you've been following along lately, you know that something has been brewing, and I am so excited to share with you exactly what that is. So, what we have coming up is something we've been working on for almost a year. It is a curated, powerful women's leadership and lifestyle festival, and it's going to be hosted at the Pillar and Post in the stunning Niagara-on-the-Lake. Wake the F Up Festival. Whatever the F is, you need to wake up, whether it's fun, focus, freedom, or the other one. We have designed a transformative experience just for you. This isn't just another leadership conference. It's a celebration. It's a breakthrough. And it's coming together as powerful women ready to align your success with true fulfillment. Imagine connecting with like-minded souls, diving deep into professional growth, and walking away not just inspired, but truly awakened. We're talking about electric energy, real conversations, and actionable insights that you can take back into your business and life. We've got an amazing lineup of speakers, including the powerhouse Olympic champion Elizabeth Manley, the unstoppable swagger coach Leslie M., and so many other absolutely powerhouse women who are ready to pour all of their gifts into you. I'll have all the details linked in the show notes, so make sure you check that out after the episode. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. It is time. It is your time to find another way to actually lean into being ambitious, awakened, and aligned. Now, let's dive into today's conversation and keep that momentum going. Let's go! Welcome to this episode of Ambitious, Awakened, and Aligned. Back as one of your favorite guests, my husband, Gerard Roy. And today, we're actually talking about communication, assessment tools. We're going to share stories personally, professionally. And so I thought I better light my Leo candle because he's a Leo. And it says, smells like I'll cut you off quicker than an overdue phone bill. Don't talk during a movie, but he can. Just shut up and hold my hand. Also, I'm gorgeous. That's the Leo candle from Real Talk Candles. So I just thought we'd get a good laugh out of that to start. And we're having tea and coffee this morning. Mm-hmm. Well, we share some perspectives on communication. And this is something that you've already heard woven in a little bit. Gerard and I are extremely passionate about this conversation all across the board. So from the perspective of business and how we have leveraged assessment tools to grow teams, to drive results, and then personally, how we've been able to really come to a place where we understand each other because we're so different. And to learn to adapt and understand and really grow trust and love and respect through the tools. And so I think as we were coming into today, I was thinking about how tired the world is of assessments. And so the second I say, oh, have you, and the word assessment comes out, people go, ugh. Like I can feel the energy and body language completely change. And because we've had such positive experiences with it, we have such a different perspective. Mm-hmm. But I think the problem is so many organizations have used assessments as a tool, but not an actual transformational tool. So they make their people do assessments, they give them the results. They might even have a little facilitator do some inspiration and share. And that's where it stops. And that's the problem, because these assessment tools are actually meant to be an ongoing exploration, something that you pull out constantly, something that you have conversations as leaders, as teams, as any relationship that you're in, and to amplify people's strengths and to look for opportunities where there might be holes on your team that you can fill based on amplifying someone else's strengths.
And they're not used that way. And I think that's why we're tired. So we're going to play today of how we've seen them leveraged in powerful ways. And so when we mention assessments, I just thought that was important, that we're coming at it from a place of how you leverage them, how you build them into a habit, how you incorporate them in teams so that you can raise the energy and raise the results, really. So that's my preamble. Welcome.
Well, thank you. That was a heck of a preamble.
I kind of noticed you snuck in the Detroit Lions cup for your coffee.
Well, I just noticed you snuck in the Leo candle, so it was only appropriate to sneak in a fellow Leo in my Detroit Lions.
Yeah, Gerard might be a football freak, and he might be obsessed with the Detroit Lions. So any opportunity, right? You see him pop a cork, you probably have the hat on. You see him try to sneak the T-shirt in. Now he's sneaking the mug in. Go Lions!
Let's go.
Go.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, let's do communication conversation. So maybe if you want to be open about, first personally, give us a story about, and again, the assessment's just the foundation of the learning. So what's one of maybe your key learnings when you started to dive into the information provided in all the different assessments?
Where to start?
I said this could be a 4-hour podcast.
Could be a 4-hour podcast. I think the first time I did an assessment was probably in our corporate company at Rogers Communication when we did the disc. And that was, I think we're 20s, 30s. Not sure, around that age. But that's a pretty simple one, right? Just, and I think there was just a little bit of an aha of just really a realization how people are so different. And I think especially when you're younger in your career, I think it's easy to take that for granted, where we're just not all the same. We're all wired so differently.
And we see everything through our own lens. So we're so young at that point that we actually don't understand there's a different way. We just don't.
And I also think, I think for me, I was I was immature, I think, in my understanding of how different we all were. And I remember seeing my assessment where I was a high D and a high I.
No. Nosebleed D. Let's be clear.
Let's be clear.
Nosebleed.
Maybe a little embarrassing.
Not at all. It's such a strength.
Numbers. And you and I've talked about this. I always thought, doesn't everybody want to win? Doesn't everybody want to drive and desire for success? And then I watched some of my peers, or saw some of my peers as they shared their assessments, and they would be an S or a C, and just what makes them tick was so much different than what made me tick. That was the beginning. And I think, to your point, your preamble was absolutely fantastic, because we didn't overly go too much deeper beyond that, right? So you had it, there was an awareness, and then gone, right? And then you moved on. You moved on to your Mary's way, but it was then forgotten. I think from there, I know you've been a big proponent of it and always did it within your business. And then within our business, my mentor, Harold Bine, really got into the Myers-Briggs, which is a little more complex and whatnot, and really understanding the introvert and extrovert and so forth.
And intuition, and whether you're a thinker or a feeler.
A judger or perceiver. And some really big things there. And I really dove into it and read the Kiersey book and really got to understand it. And actually, we did the assessment for the entire, not only the leadership team, but all the staff. And because I was moving into a brand new industry that I knew nothing about, what was really important to me is to ensure I understood the people. And when I got to understand the people and I actually dove in and read their profiles, it was just a huge aha study them, realize them, what made them different, and then how to meet with them, have one-on-ones with them, and to change the language, because what made one person tick didn't make the other. And that was a real huge thing for me, to really get that understanding and the difference of the power of the conversation on making sure you adapt it to that person's personality profile. Just had a significant impact on how how I started to lead.
How you lead, how you coach, how you converse, how you motivate. Now we get into all of that, and at a deeper level, how you help somebody manage through moments of stress in business, because everything's cyclical. There's higher stress moments, and then you're kind of navigating the norm, and then you have a higher stress moment. And the really interesting thing, just yesterday, I sent to one of the CEOs I work with the reminder of one of the people on her team, because they're going through a high stress situation and some of, interesting behaviors are showing up. That's a whole other, because we adapt in stress very differently than we show up in the norm. Yes. And even then, if we go to us personally, you're blending a family together, or you're going through some of the stages of raising 4 children, we showed up differently in those high stress moments than we would, just on the everyday. So every relationship is impacted by the knowingness of all of this, and we're hardwired different. So just, kind of jokingly and also very seriously, Gerard actually has a profile that says his profile believes his profile is right. And I bring that up because I think that's been one of your, okay, go ahead, say it.
Because it is?
Because it is. That's been one of, I think, your greatest growth opportunities and nemesis is having to navigate that. So I think as I've watched you grow as a leader, and even in our relationship, originally, I would say you fought against that. There was more well, of course, it's just affirmed me that I am the right way, versus we are all unique and different. And really watching that transformation with you, changing and adapting and understanding that you are always going to think your lens is the right lens. So you have to pause more and really take time to understand people in a different way. And, you would prefer to, this is another thing from the assessments, prefer to talk versus listen. So having to teach yourself the adaptive behavior of conscious listening. And so I think that's really the place this starts, is deeply understanding self first. Raising that consciousness, that self-awareness. I was just reading my mug as you were talking. Who you've been is zero indication of who you're capable of becoming, right? Like you're shedding and evolving constantly of those perceptions, but having the awareness from the tools allows you to be able to do that versus just walking through life kind of confused, right? Like, why isn't everybody thinking like me? Why isn't everybody acting like me?
Lori, I really don't know where I would be without it. If I think back, and even younger in my career, I obviously made a lot of mistakes. Did some great stuff, of course. But, I would like to have some do-overs.
Oh, wouldn't we all?
And I think a lot of it was just the awareness of how I am perceived by other people, and how I perceived others, and even the judgment behind it. So, and I think every person, some people take this on a lot more naturally than others, but somebody like me, who I think I am very emotionally connected, but only when I turn it on, right? You and I have talked about this. I can easily be in the cloud. I can easily be on my own journey and be in my own
miss the emotional cues of others.
Completely. And I can be so driven that I'm just focused on that thing and that one thing only. If I don't pause and put myself in consciousness, and Dr. Joe says it's easy at a certain point. I haven't found that easiness yet. But I think what I do a better job than I ever have in the past is catch myself, right? And you're never going to be perfect at it. I think the secret is how do you catch yourself and pause and actually think about the other person and what they may be thinking and understand they are different and making sure you're talking their language. And that's not being phony. That's just being authentic. That's being real. That's being thoughtful. Because if you're just always working and communicating in your language only and the way you want to be communicated to, well, that's not fair to the other person. And it's not being conscious, right? And I just think you're a better leader, a better person by giving it that thought, pausing, and speaking into the language that other person wants to communicate with. Do I have that nailed down? No, I still make mistakes. But I think that the most important part is catching yourself and gather that information you've learned from those assessment tools. Understand what is that person, how do they want to be communicated to, and being able to adapt to that. But in order to do that, you have to practice. You have to continue to educate yourself, remind yourself of those particular things. And I know myself, if I'm not reading a book, if I'm not reminding myself, I will go back to my old self and be unconscious and not think of those things, and therefore not be as good of a leader as I can be.
And to be fair, it's also what's natural. So remember, we're learning, and that's where the self-awareness grows, is we're first learning who we are, because that's the coat that feels the most comfortable. Right? So then it's about learning that there's other styles, behaviors, personalities, adaptations, limiting beliefs. Like, let's layer them all in there. And then we have another human in front of us with different experiences and beliefs and personality traits and behavior styles. And that's where we get to learn how to leverage our self-awareness so that we can sit in compassion and support and desire to help others grow. And when it comes to teams, as a leader, that's our greatest opportunity. That's our greatest role, is to support people to be their best selves, find their best role that helps drive the business, build connection, build incredible culture that catches. And so as you were describing, sort of way back to the Sprint Canada Rogers days, is that we worked in sales organizations. And so for, a couple of decades in business, my lens was through the lens of sales organizations and driving sales and working with customers. So that's also a whole other avenue where I love the understanding, based on what I've learned through all these different tools, is then how can I have better, richer, more meaningful conversations with customers and help them drive their businesses in unique ways. So that's really where I started to play with the dance of it. I happen to be intuitive, N in the Myers-Briggs is one of mine. And so that comes more natural for me.
It's a natural superpower. You've got that.
It's a natural one.
Yes.
But then there were other things in sales that were not natural that I got to look at, okay, I don't need to judge self, but I can build those skills. And I want to spend more time in worlds where my strengths get to be leveraged naturally and build skills for the moments where I have to use some other ones. So I'm going to use an example here of, so I'm comfortable with sales organizations, and in sales organizations, we have high drivers and high influencers. So we have DIs or IDs, and we're looking for those skill sets per se. And whether you leveraged these tools or not, if you actually went across a sales organization and decided to have some fun and do it, you would find you've got your most successful salespeople for the most part. And there's always...
Not stereotyping.
Not at all, because you're always going to be outside the box and find some secrets and surprises. But for the most part, you're going to have drivers and you're going to have influencers. And it makes sense because that's who would be most comfortable in a sales organization. So then fast forward to starting my own business and starting to work with different kinds of organizations. Now I had adapted behaviors of how I coached, led, facilitated that were natural to me. So
always
also
led sales
didn't have to
teams.
think about it.
That's right.
And I could just show up with those things and we had success. We drove our sales team to #1 in the country and all those amazing things. And all of a sudden, my example is I started working with an accounting firm and working with their leaders and working with their entire organization to drive results, build their culture, amplify. And first of all, it's amazing that they even brought me in, because I just still to this day have such a heart for the fact that they care so much about building their team, so much about the growth personally of their people. And I stumbled a little bit for a little while, and I couldn't get people to open up, couldn't get people to really dive deep into the work we were doing, the reflective questions, that transformational piece wasn't hitting the same as the experiences I had had. And I'd come home and talk to Gerard, and, we'd just be surprised and like, well, what can you do differently? And how can I lean in? And then I pulled out the content, the knowledge, the wisdom behind assessments, and had this massive aha, which is I had a bunch of C's. And C is that conscientious, and S, the supporters, the conscientiousness,
and introverts.
Introverted. And so I wasn't giving them time to prepare. In a sales organization, people are always ready to go on the fly. In organizations that are more technical in nature and more information led or detail oriented, they need time to sit with things. They need time to prepare. They want to be more thoughtful in their answers.
Process.
Yeah.
The content.
So that was the tiny shift, is I just started giving them advance of what we were going to work through. And all of a sudden, boom. And I started putting them in small groups instead of big group conversations. Boom.
More intimate.
It's so amazing because they feel more comfortable in that situation. So that's just an example of being able to adapt, because those are two very easy polar opposites. When we really look at organizations, like I look at your leadership team, you have a blend of all of it. And that's more normal, right?
Yeah.
Because we have different roles. But if I look at a sales organization, it's heavy one. If I look at something like an accounting firm, it's heavy one. So being able to see those lenses of such polarity of things actually really then allowed me to lean into most teams are going to be blended. And what do we have to do to ensure we bring everyone along?
Yeah. And Laurie, that was huge. And this is why it's so important to practice it and also talk about it. Because when we had that conversation many years ago, it was a game changer for me, because I had different people that were more effective in meetings than others. And I want to be careful of that word. That's not really what I mean. It was because how I was leading.
More conversational?
Well, I think I was expecting, because my natural instinct, I'm an extrovert, obviously. And,
what?
And I'm used to being a little bit more on the fly. I didn't prepare as much as I should, or give the team enough time to prepare. So I'm used to just, let's brainstorm, let's go off the cuff, away we go. And, half the team, 3/4 of the team were good with that. But then I had a quarter of my leadership team that were, it's like, what's wrong? Are they not engaged? Are they not? Why aren't they communicating or sharing their ideas like the others? And it was that conversation you had, that you shared that with me on your team's performance, and how you had many introverts and how you had to give them time to prepare. And once they prepared and you gave them that information earlier,
it was so
a game
rich.
changer.
It was so rich. And I actually realized richer, more meaningful, deeper, more impactful, more productive of what results we could gain from it than the typical everyone's talking. So it seems like there's engagement, but that's not true either.
But it's not deep.
Right.
Right.
There's no action potentially or transformation. Back to that.
Think about the shift, though, in your view. I originally have my meetings off the cuff. Let's talk about it. Topics kind of fly as they go. 3/4 of my team's engaged. A quarter isn't. And my lens is, wow, I got 3/4 of a high-performing leadership team.
Right.
The other quarter, not so much. So I pause, I change my style, I come more prepared, I send the questions beforehand, and now I send it out. Well, the information from that quarter all of a sudden more detailed, more thought provoking, more thought process behind it, deeper conversations. That quarter of the people are now stronger, deeper. I don't want to say that, but you know what I mean. Like they're really putting some in depth, and now I've got full engagement by
Across the board.
And that was just such a game changer to go, wow, this person and this person needs to have this information beforehand so they have time to process it. And when I asked them to send me something in writing, those are the people that have the deepest, more meaningful, I don't want to, again, I'm stereotyping, but a lot of times it's surprising how in-depth that they are. So we have to really be careful of having that lens and make sure changing your ways and making sure that you adapt to all your people on the team. And like I said, that was a complete game changer. And that's something that is, I think, really important for all leaders to keep that in mind and ensuring that you're setting your team up for success.
Well, and I was thinking the unnecessary stress that you're putting on your people when you don't think about the fact that we're all different.
And how are they feeling?
Exactly.
Yeah,
like the stress that would have, I apologize to all my amazing people that work in this accounting firm, because I am still blessed to work with them, how much stress I must have put on them in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm also thinking just about your own leadership journey. Actually, as we were talking, I think it's important to say something else we learned from these tools is there's a layering to it. Because when we just talk about DISC, for example, Jordan and I actually are both IDs. I'm not a nosebleed, but we actually have
a little more balanced.
No, I don't think that's right. We have more of what would look like similar. And absolutely, when we look at where the D and I need to come in, we do show up pretty similar, actually, in many ways.
Yeah.
But then we layer in a Myers-Briggs where it starts to see how different we are. And then we layer in something like an Enneagram and we really start to see how different we are. And of course, I'm going to go back to these are a tool that can help support communication, transformation, self-awareness, consciousness, driving results, all of these things, right? Working with them is really leveraging them in that way. They're not the be all end all, but they are a massive support. And so now we start layering in things like Working Genius, which comes from Patrick Lencioni.
5 love languages.
The 5 love languages.
Which was a game changer for you and I.
We're going to do a whole other podcast on that one because, we have some deep stuff to share on that. Probably the biggest moment of marriage, partnership, personality, relationship change in our entire lives.
Are we going to get vulnerable in that conversation?
Oh, for sure. Of course we are.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He was so wrong that day.
Was I?
We were both so wrong and strong. Both so wrong and strong. That's a whole other conversation too about the wrong and strong, which comes out in when you were standing in your behavior styles without this consciousness. Wrong and strong is something that really shows up in many ways. So anyways, that is another time, the 5 love languages, and a body of work that we just love and is so adaptive to, again, the work environment. So, I think what's really cool, I often offer people that I'll do it for their partners in an organization because us growing as individuals is what drives and changes teams. Us growing as a couple, us becoming better parents, and when I say better, I mean more aligned. I think it's that the more that we can be true to ourselves and the more that we can have partners where we can continue to grow and do the dance together to elevate each other, become our best, truest selves, that's when we can then change families, communities, companies in the world.
It just diffuses stress and arguments and so much more.
We can giggle.
I don't know if you want to go here, but how about the emotional and logical, where I think logical first, you think emotional first.
Oh my gosh.
And when we learned that
I love
about
that.
each other, that was like, wow.
Yeah. So let's go there.
Let's
I
go
just
there.
first want to summarize this thought of, so these all come together. And I think that's also something from the past I've seen where we all get behind DISC and now we're labeling people, or we all get behind Myers-Briggs and we're labeling people, or we're talking about, are you an Enneagram 1 or 3? And it's, I'm okay with that. I get that we have to develop it somehow. But what is more transformational is when we can start to put the full picture together, all the pieces of the puzzle, pull in different opportunities. And this is where this assessment dashboard, which I've integrated into my business called Cloverleaf, has been so powerful because it takes 9 different assessment tools. It pulls them all together and it starts giving coaching tips. You can actually put Gerard and Lori side by side on the dashboard
and see how much mine is better than hers.
And that. And see, where you may have some struggles in your communication and where you can work together. And then you can also get a daily tip on people on your team for your own coaching support of them and for your own coaching tips. And as many years as Gerard and I have stood in this work and have navigated together and have studied it and integrated it, using this platform, we still this week got a little tip on each other, giggle, send it to each other, say, oh, here's a reminder. So it gives this power, like wisdom to the knowledge. And so, I love pulling them all together. Or the Working Genius is more of like a productivity tool. So now I can layer behavior with productivity. So do you like to finish a task, or do you like to be in vision? And we need to know that. We need vision people and we need task people. Yeah. And so, yes, let's go to now. Over to you, Gerard. You had something to say.
Well, I was just going to compliment what you were just talking about, just with regards to diversity within your team. Right?
Yes.
You can't just have a bunch of doers.
No.
You need vision, right? You need a visionary. You need a galvanizer.
Yeah.
Right. To bring in the troops.
And you need discernment. Like Gerard, I have never met a person that asks why more. And I still don't love the why. He's like a 2-year-old. Why? Because.
I'm curious.
Because, yeah. I love it. Curiosity is so important.
Yeah.
And I'm super curious too. I just, again, come at it different.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I'm really someone who I want to ensure we get it right. And I'm one of those people that I don't want to do it just for the sake
You're
of
good
doing
at discernment.
I need to understand the why. And if I understand the why, I can get behind it. But I'm not just going to do it because someone said to do that. Which I think is I'm not judging here, but there is some challenges even in corporate where they just want to follow the thing, right? It's like, this is the way we've always done it. And that's one thing that I think we always have to be careful within an organization, is not always do things the way it's always been done. We need to understand the why it's done and ensuring that it's continued, because what was valuable 5 years ago, last week, may not be the same as today. So I think that's why.
Discernment too, though, the power of discernment comes in when you may have a new vision and people could get behind that vision. Discernment will ensure that there's awareness on the things that you might not think about, even in executing a new vision. So it's that too. But where you were going was how we make decisions differently.
Okay, well, that was the second
that was
part.
My
ADD kicked in there.
That's cool. And then a whole other layer, we got ADD.
Yes.
We.
So we talked about how we process information and what's our go-to first. So when Lori and I have a conversation, and especially if it's more serious, whether it's about the kids or about business or our personal life or whatever it may be, as soon as that conversation happens, and this isn't right or wrong, it's just different. You go right to emotion.
I go to feel.
You go to feel. How does it feel? How does it people? How are people going to react to it?
How are people going to be impacted?
Etc.
Yeah.
Right. And myself, I go right to the logic. Right.
Fact, logic, data, results. I go right to that immediately. And whenever you and I do that, especially earlier on, we've gotten much, much better at it now. It would go. And the funny thing is that we'd cross in the middle.
Well, we would first
Be frustrated with each other. Yeah.
Argue, have heated conversation. Heated conversation. Heated, like, and then we'd like, and then start to calm down. You know, we'd start to have different conversations, and we would start to understand, and Lori would then start getting into the logic, and then I would start getting into the emotion. It goes full circle.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it, an hour later, we would laugh and say, we're saying the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how often?
Mm-hmm.
And that would be time and time again.
It still is.
And
because that won't, that's how we're hardwired to make decisions. So we can now like step into it together.
Yes.
And use each other's power.
Yes.
Like understand the superpower from each of us.
Mm-hmm.
So because we have the self-awareness in it, now we navigate that in a second. But we still have
We had to see it on paper.
It hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't changed.
Right.
But what was interesting is that there wasn't even a realization until we saw it on an assessment tool.
Yeah. It's
that's how we were wired. It was at Myers-Briggs.
It is, yeah.
And it was so weird because it showed the circle of me logical, then I eventually get to the emotion, and you were completely the opposite, going emotion and then went to the logic, and then it was like, wow. And from that day forward, our communication style improved dramatically.
I was going to say what was really interesting about that learning is that Gerard would always have this comment, the perspective, let's say, is that I didn't think about the facts or the data, or that I was too emotional, which is a comment now that isn't accepted in our home because nobody can be too emotional, right? Emotion is really important. Feeling the feels is important. And he is really emotional and feels the feels, actually. It's just that we do it in such a different way that was the lens for him. And for me, for a long time, I would say, like, you're so data focused. And he would always say, no, I'm not. And think I wasn't. And so and it affects trust. Like, that's the biggest part of when you think I'm not focused on data or facts, right? Then the impact of that is, let's even look at financial as a life. Then he doesn't think I'm paying attention to money, or I'm paying attention to the details, or he's watching me run my business and wonder if I'm actually looking at the data or the facts or the statistics or the results. And yet he knew I was this really results focused person. So I think it was very confusing as well. And then confusing for me to hear from you that you didn't maybe trust some of those pieces.
Yeah, that's fair.
So once we learned that, the reality is I am very results, data, information, knowledge. Like, I am a knowledge seeker. I want the answers. I am 100%. Super curious. Except if we're making decisions, I first think, how do people feel? How is this going to impact the people?
Yeah.
And so now that he's come to understand that that's just how the information flows through my decision-making matrix.
I'm a little more patient.
He trusts me more too, like, because he knows that, but for some reason
I have to
couldn't figure out how we were different.
I have to let it go through the process.
Yeah, and now I see the same the other way around.
And vice versa, yeah.
Yes.
Like,
so now I
to say you're not emotional, I'm not emotional is a complete, obviously, I'm an emotional disaster at times.
He cries. He's a crier. No, it's beautiful. This is another debate we have all the time.
Oh my God. Every time I speak public speaking, I feel like tears go down my face.
I don't think you can ever find a more, what do I call you? An oxymoron, where he is like the most competitive human being. I challenge you to find a more competitive human being in the world. And it's taken him a long time of leveraging these assessments to go, oh, I actually am different. I am competitive. Look, it says
who doesn't want to win?
Everyone, I want to win. But I'm not as competitive as you. I'm quiet competitive. You're outwardly competitive. And so, but then he has this beautiful side where he is probably the most compassionate human I've ever met too. So it's an oxymoron. So he will be like, I gotta win, with tears in his eyes.
Let's go.
Yeah. Really super emotional. And it's beautiful. Yeah. You're challenged right there.
I'm sorry. I got distracted.
Oh.
I just noticed. What's the F on your necklace?
Wake the F up. Wake the F up. Yeah.
The festival.
The festival, but also just, I think it's my new belief system.
Yeah.
Is we are, this aligns so much with this conversation, actually. We're walking around unawakened. Like, this is the awakened and aligned. We're not awake. We're I think the biggest opportunity of leadership in today's world. And when I say leadership, I mean, we all are leaders of ourselves, of our families, of our communities, of our companies. We each are leaders, and to see that ourselves in that way and to wake the F up. Like, let's wake up. Let's wake up.
Let's wake up.
Let's wake up.
You know what? I'm so proud of you that you're putting on this Wake the F Up festival in October.
Thank you.
And I know it's a women event, but I think it's just a constant reminder for all of us. You know, I shared earlier in the podcast that I have to be conscious to have the entire ecosystem in mind, people in mind and whatnot, because we're not always wake the F up. Right. And I know personally, I got to push the button. And I just encourage everyone to push the button and be conscious and be aware. And it's not easy, but it's important. I think. And when you do that, it's hard, but when you do it, you're happier because you're the best version of yourself.
Yeah. That reminds me of another story when it comes to how we leverage the assessments, or how we just know ourselves deeper. Let's say that instead. Is Gerard is extremely extroverted, and he is lifted up by being around people. So his energy tank is filled by being around people. And on the opposite extreme is an introvert whose energy center is filled up by being alone, by having some alone time. And even understanding this as a couple, I'm in the middle. So I have these moments of I'm filled up by people, and these moments of I really need to go in a cave and hide for a bit. And my social battery is not I don't have as big of a social battery as he does. And so we've had to learn that dance. And I would say I've had to grow in that, of being able to ask for what I need.
Yeah.
And, instead of you being frustrated and also I'm the party planner. So in the moment when I'm feeling extroverted, I am going to fill our calendar.
Speak of oxymoron.
Speak of oxymoron. And then the day comes and now I'm in
You planned it.
introvert mode.
You got to go.
And I'm like, but I can't. I need to hide.
Too much people.
But when it comes to you and your role, because you come from a project management background, operations, sales as well, but that natural to go towards task management, get the tasks done, you do lend towards that. And so I'd given you a book for Christmas a few years ago. I forget fully the title, but it was the CEO effect or something.
Excellence
Experience, CEO Excellence. We'll look that up and we'll put it in the notes. And I just said, I challenge you, because I get to use this word, I challenge you with Gerard, because he likes to accept challenges because he's competitive. So I said, I challenge you to leverage these superpowers you have of being extroverted, loving to go into ways to collaborate with people, build relationships. Could you look at your role now of moving a little bit away from managing the day-to-day full tasks of the business as the president of the company? Could you move up and use that superpower of extroversion in building relationships and the power that you had in that?
Yeah, I think that was a game changer because naturally I'm a control freak.
Wow. Can we get that? We got that on tape. I was going to say, can I get that in writing? I don't think you've ever admitted that out loud.
It's out there now. I'm also comfortable being uncomfortable because I've always been in a position and somewhere where I'm not the expert in. So I'm again, back to an oxymoron. I'm a control freak, yet always been in a position of not being the
collaborative control freak.
A collaborative control freak because I've had to. And I think just what I've learned is letting go, letting the people do the task, provide the guidance, provide the vision, and
Trust.
trust in the process. And I do. I have an incredible team. So I'm very grateful and gracious for that. And then being out in public and building strengthening partnerships. And you've always shared that with me, that is one of my superpowers. And it's something I love doing. Like it doesn't take a lot of work. I don't even consider it work. Being at more events, being at where my people are, where our people is. And yeah, to me, it gives me a high, it gives me energy. And I really do think it was a game changer. And it's something that I just love doing, and meeting great people, which is great. And then connecting them with the right people on my team and whatnot. And it really has been a game changer within the organization. And what was weird is I felt guilty doing it at first, just because it was an event and wanted other people to do it. But as you challenged me a few years back on, well, that's kind of your job. And I think I'm also grateful some people on my team over the years and even today, that people giving me permission, saying, Gerard, no.
They've encouraged,
saying, we need you to do that. Like, you're good at that. Please do it and bring us the work, bring us the connection, bring us the partnership, and then we will execute. And that has been a game changer. And I thank the people on my team that's given me that permission, because it was a weird guilt thing. I don't know why I felt guilty at it, but it's been good for me doing that.
I think I know why you felt guilty, because some of the limiting beliefs which have just come from how we've done business in our culture is like, if I'm not, as the leader, hands into everything, mucky in the sandbox, then I mustn't be doing my job. Whereas when we really look at the most powerful, and I mean that word from a perspective of engaging and connecting and collaborative types of leaders, it's that they trust their people. They hire good people with strengths that are different than theirs. They amplify those good people and they let them do their thing while you go do the thing you're best at, which is actually about building other partnerships, amplifying the relationships, building different connections, and really watching you do that. Like, I can't even explain the vibration and buzz when I watch you, of like, it's this massive frequency of energy. Whereas for me, as an example, if I had to go to all the events that he goes to, and I love going to events, but I'm probably 1 to 10, my vibration starts going down, because then I get into insecurities and energy's drained. And
which is the weirdest thing, because you are energy and you are such a vibrant light in any room you walk in. So
well, thank you.
It's back to another oxymoron, as I know you feel that, but when you go into a room, people know you're there. Your presence, your smile, your brightness.
But it's the management of it. So if I have to do too much of that,
you come home
I
tired.
can't show up in that way. Right. So I don't think that would be true if I didn't know myself enough to know I can't go to the 10 you've gone to in 2 weeks. I can go to the 1 and show up really intentional. Right. So again, it's just back to knowing ourselves and who we are and what our superpowers are. So I thought I wanted to highlight that story. Do you have any other stories before we wrap up? Or any other final comments?
A lot of stories there. No, I think people call this the easy stuff, right? The soft skills. This isn't easy. This isn't soft. And I can't express enough how game-changing this is, and the results you will receive if done properly, done consciously, because this impacts culture. And I can't put a number to that. I don't know where we would be if we didn't have a good culture. I don't know any organization I've ever worked for. When the culture is bad, the numbers are bad, right? People quit. People aren't happy. And that's not fun, right? I like to win, but I like to win with others. I like to win with people. I like people to be happy. It's like, we're in this way too long. We spend more time at work than we do with our own families. So to me, the importance of culture, people feeling trusted, people feeling a sense of belonging is critical in the success of an organization. It's critical in the results. And make no mistake, it all goes hands in hands. And I don't think leaders give this enough attention or enough credit for the results. And I think that's that's probably the number one thing I would encourage all leaders to understand the importance of it. Because I know I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for the soft skills. Those soft skills are hard.
Yeah, thank you. What a beautiful wrap up. And just to add to that, I would say there is not an organization, a relationship, a situation where I haven't seen this amplify the results, amplify the connection, amplify the culture. And so even just the two of us sitting here, I think of the ripple effect of all the people we have touched by doing our work in this way.
Yeah.
So that we could be, more purposeful parents, more purposeful spouses, more purposeful children to our parents, siblings, all of it. Yeah. And then I expand that to community involvement we have through coaching and different things like that. And then amplify that to the corporations or organizations we work with. All of this ripple effect is massive from just two people. And
it's a journey.
It's a journey.
It's a journey because, we're not always going to have our A game. We talk about this. We falter and falter again. But I think the important part is keep going, never give up, not be too hard on ourselves, and just how quickly can we recover to get back on our A game. And so I think that's another important factor to say, hey, we definitely don't got it all figured out.
No, we're constantly evolving.
It's a lifelong journey. So
yeah, we're constantly evolving.
I just encourage everyone to get on the journey.
Yeah, because my mug, who you've been is zero indication of who you're capable of becoming.
100%.
We go deeper all the time together on this. I guarantee you there isn't a week where we don't have a conversation that is aligned to what we're talking about right now.
Speaking of culture.
Yes.
Right.
I mean,
speaking of culture,
that would be a whole other podcast.
I'm making fun, a whole podcast on its own. And
Dan Campbell.
We should this should be guaranteed podcast about the Detroit Lions and the culture.
Okay.
Dan, what do you think about this? Dan, I'm talking to you. You and I should connect. I know you understand culture, Dan Campbell. So you go from the bottom of the basement, 0-16, to going to the semifinals last year, and this year, future Super Bowl champions. And it all starts with culture.
Yeah, and back to him knowing each of his people. I think, we're not in that locker room. Well, Gerard thinks he is. He thinks he has a direct line, but that's a whole other story as well. But the reality is we can see it. We can see that he cares for each and every one of the people, and he understands how different they are, and he understands they need motivated differently. And you can see that he has been so intentional in that.
And it starts in Brad Holmes, the general manager, Sheila Ford. I was just listening to a podcast today at mlive.com, and they were talking about it. It really started with Sheila Ford. And
well, of course, it started with a woman. Who wanted to wake the F up.
And you know what?
The football.
So true.
Yeah.
So, yeah. You got to get her on this podcast.
Well, let's do it. Dan Campbell and Sheila Ford. You're
and
next.
Brad Holmes.
And Brad Holmes.
Absolutely.
They're all next.
Yes, you're next.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. And, I hope that this serves you listening to Gerard and I. We've had our own really powerful journey, and we're very open to sharing the stories that we've experienced. And, we're just really passionate that the more you get to know yourself and some tools that are available to help you in that transformation, just go for it. And certainly reach out to me if we can support you. Reach out to Gerard if you want to hear more stories from him or think he might be able to support you. Just send us a message. We'd love to support you in any way. So to your communication journey, and until we see you again on the podcast, just really work on that awaken the F up, whatever your F is, whether it's actually fun or freedom or finances or a focus or whatever it needs to be. We love being on this journey with you.
Thanks, everyone.